What is going on? Welcome to the Business Ministry Podcast. I am here today interviewing Stephen Waldo. Stephen Waldo is the owner at Husband Help Haven, and I've actually been a customer of his for going on about 3 or 4 years ever since I bought one of your first products as I was going through some issues of my own. But first of all, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thanks, Josh. I am really glad to be here. I really appreciate you having me on, and I'm excited to tell my story. This isn't normally what I spend my time doing on calls like this, but that's okay. Usually I'm working in a little bit of a different realm, so this will be a fun little trek off the beaten path for me here.
Yeah, totally. And I think you've done some amazing things. I was telling you that before we even got into the official recording here. But like I said, I've been a customer of yours for a while, so it's still interesting to me to be on the other side or to be speaking directly to you because I've had your voice in my ear through some of the products and things like that you've created over the years. So I'm just so grateful to have you here.
Oh, well, I'm glad to be here. I think we're going to have fun here today.
Yeah, for sure. So just to go through the obligatory intro, Stephen Waldo is the owner at Husband Help Haven. Husband Help Haven is a place for men going through marriage crisis. It's where common sense advice and biblical relationship principles come together to give men the support and direction they need to not just survive separation, but come out on the other side as better husbands, fathers, and men.
That's pretty much it. That's the name of the game. You know, when I'm introducing my podcast, what I say is it's where we teach you how to be the best husband you can be, no matter what your marriage is like right now. Of course, a lot of the guys that we work with, I mean, almost everybody finds the site when they're in the midst of marriage crisis. But, I'm a big believer that personal growth can happen at any time. And in fact, that it's often in the midst of those personal crises that the most personal growth happens. So, that really is the mission of the site is let's not wait for things to be good and then start improving. We need to really start improving, and then no matter what's going to happen in the marriage, we're going to work on being the best man that you can be. And yeah, that carries over to all those different areas, husband, father, and just man in general.
So I just want to give a quick backstory as to why we're interviewing you in the first place, and then have you tell a little bit of your story on how you got started, because I think it's so organic and it's so amazing. And that's really the story that I want people who are listening to this to hear, to understand how you can go about having a passion or having a mission that you feel really led to get involved with. And you just start creating and serving that community over a period of time. And then things happen organically. I love what you just said just now, where people just asked me questions and I started answering them, and then I compiled it in a way and I created something that I could sell, and it just happened. One of the things that I want listeners to understand here is that when you feel a call or feel a mission on your life, when you feel a community that needs something, or you see a problem in the world that you feel compelled to solve, chances are there's a pushing of the Holy Spirit or a pushing of God in your life to do something or to solve that problem. And then a lot of times people get caught up on the how. How do I do that? How can I go about tackling these issues? How can I go about creating this change in the world that I feel led to do? So I think that there's going to be a lot of people inspired through your story and through how you were able to create this over the past, I don't know how long it's been, 5, 6, 7 years?
Yeah, actually. So I started the site in 2011. So we're 10 years here, which is crazy to think about, but yeah.
That is actually crazy. Wow. Almost a decade.
Yeah.
So without further ado, why don't you just give me a rundown on how you got started?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. It's, you talk about the Holy Spirit, and I think really where I felt that push the most was actually when I transitioned to full time. So I didn't really feel that leading sense up until that point. It wasn't that sort of strong conviction, I guess. So I actually started freelance writing while I was still in college. And it was 2010 that I started to make some money from freelance writing. And also at the time, there was a popular online business model called micro niche sites. And so those were really, really big. And I remember there was a guy called, and his online name was X Factor, and he taught how to make these little micro niche AdSense sites. And that really was such a cool concept to me. Just this idea of sort of passive revenue, that was really appealing to me. I've always been a proficient writer. And so the freelance writing was something that I did to make money now, to kind of pay my bills. And then the micro niche sites was sort of my side thing that I was working on. As soon as I started making money with that stuff, I quickly lost motivation to continue college. I never have been much of one for the school side of things. So I just made the decision to go ahead and drop out and pursued freelance writing full time. And then the whole time was kind of working on some of these small websites. So I did that for a couple of years, and I eventually started this site, Husband Help Haven. It was sort of actually the last site that I started because it's the one that actually got some traction. So I had started a few beforehand. I'd had one that I was writing about luxury watches, one that I was writing about coffee makers, one that I was actually writing about infidelity. And I guess actually, if I were to go back really far, I had a couple of articles on that website that were tailored to men going through separation. And those articles were doing really, really well. And so that kind of got me thinking that this is something that not only am I passionate about, because I myself was dating the woman who is now my wife, I was gearing up for marriage. I was just doing all of this independent research and reading and thinking, and I'd started meeting with a mentor. So I was just spending a lot of time thinking about what I was going to do in my own marriage to make it different than my parents' marriage. And so this is the other part of the backstory that's kind of important to know, is that my own parents are divorced. Great parents. I love my childhood. I love both my parents. They tried very hard to make their marriage work. I still maintain to this day that if they had a competent marriage counselor, I think that they could have made their marriage work. They really fit the bill for what is supposed to be a successful couple in marriage counseling, because they both wanted to change. They were both willing to change. They wanted to save their marriage. Statistically, those are the couples who do the best in marriage counseling, but they didn't. And they did end up getting divorced. And it was when I was 19 years old that they told me that. I just always grew up knowing that I didn't want to have that marriage, and that I was going to do everything in my power to safeguard my own marriage against divorce. And it really was in that time of my life before I got married when I kind of made this transition in how I thought about marriage. And it used to be, you grow up and you hear these statistics about marriage, like that 50% of marriages end in divorce, things like that. It turns out it's more like 30%, but nonetheless, people still say that 50%. And when you hear that, you think, oh, what else has 50%? A coin flip, right? So you kind of get into this mindset of like, whether you have a happy marriage or an unhappy marriage, a successful marriage or a failed marriage is just up to chance. That's kind of how I thought about it. And that was not satisfying to me. Obviously, I had some commitment issues. I didn't want to commit to a relationship that I thought had a 50% chance of success. So that's really kind of what led me down that path of what can I do to safeguard my own marriage? And so then we kind of have these two things that are happening in my life alongside each other. And it was when I started Husband Help Haven that they came together. And I started to write about some of the concepts that I was also just personally exploring myself. Well, it turns out I wasn't the only person that was interested in those things. And I started to it was probably after about 6 months or a year that I started to get just this tiny little trickle of guys who would reach out to me. And I still remember the very first guy that I really kind of walked along with through his marriage crisis. His name was Jake, and he was just in a really messy situation. I followed along with him for probably 6 or 8 months. And man, looking back, even by some of the stuff I've seen after 10 years, his was still a very messy separation. But I told him, look, I'm just a guy on the internet. I'm not a marriage counselor. I'm not a pastor. I'm not a psychologist. I don't have any degrees or any credentials or anything. You like the stuff I've written. You like some of the advice I've given, but just recognize that's what it is. It's a guy on the internet giving you some advice. Take it as that. If it's helpful, great. But he appreciated it, and it helped him, and he got through things. And that really is when I learned how much I like helping people and how much I felt that I just did well with it, honestly. And so after Jake and alongside Jake, there started to be, a handful of other guys, and I'd start getting, 1 or 2 emails a week, a handful of guys a month who would just reach out to me and ask for some advice. And I'd always tell them the exact same thing that I told Jake, which is, look, I'm just a guy on the internet, but here's my advice. Here's what I'd do if I were in your shoes. Here's some things you might try. And again, same story, always very appreciative, always found the advice helpful, always came back and told me nobody else is telling me to do some of this stuff. I encouraged men to embrace their masculinity, to embrace their role as a husband, to take responsibility for their relationship, to take responsibility for themselves, for their own happiness. Whether they were a Christian or not, I encouraged them to follow the same things that I was attempting to follow in preparing to get married and in trying to be a good, at that time, fiance, which is just loving your wife as Christ loved the church, being sacrificial, seeing her betterment as your own betterment. Just some of those concepts that you see laid out in Ephesians chapter 5, which is what we had read at our wedding. And it really is kind of the bedrock of how I view my role as a husband, which is a sacrificial servant leader. And so a lot of those principles, again, I don't teach them with that language. I'm not citing Bible verses and stuff when I'm teaching this stuff on Husband Help Haven, but the principles, I make every effort that I can to make sure that there is absolutely nothing on the site that contradicts any biblical teaching on marriage. So anyway, that's kind of how it started, is just giving some of that advice to guys. And then it just started to pick up steam as I sort of answered emails that would give me new ideas for stuff to write about. And so I, had some big sort of content hubs around emotional infidelity, around midlife crisis, around just general separation, divorce, things like that. It really got to be kind of actually overwhelming to where I was getting 5 to 10 emails a day, just trying to keep up with all of them. And for a long time, I did keep up with every single email. I don't anymore. It's just a bit too much. That kind of kept up for a few years. And it was when my wife got pregnant. We got married when my wife got pregnant. We decided that, I'd saved up from freelance writing. We were going to go back and live with my mom for a little bit while we were moving from Kansas City to Springfield, Missouri. And that was when I decided, you know what, we're going to be a little bit lower expenses for a bit. I've got this saved up. At that point, it was like a regular thing that guys were like, dude, do you have a book? Do you have anything that I can take that's like more of this? I really want it. And that was getting to be, it was like, I got those questions a couple times a year, and then it had progressed to where I was getting those questions every single month, sometimes every single week, was getting guys asking me about that. I was like, okay, I know that there's an audience. I know people want this stuff. I mean, they've basically told me they would buy it. I'd be stupid not to. I mean, really at that point. So I took 6 months while my wife was pregnant, while we were living at my mom's house and had low expenses, to just write a book. I mean, so I just did it, recorded all the audios, launched it, and went full time. And, kind of the rest is history. That was Manly Marriage Revival. I mean, it was basically just a summation of the extended conversations that I found myself having over and over and over again with guys. Every now and then I go through and tally up just how many men I have helped, whether that's, one-on-one conversations in person. Most of them are just through email correspondence. Some of them are through phone calls. Some of them are just guys at my church. Some of them are friends, whatever. But yeah, I mean, the last time I did it, it was up over 2,600, 2,700 guys that I've had these one-on-one conversations with by whatever medium it was. When you have that many conversations with that many people who are going through the similar type of thing, I mean, you start to see patterns. You start to see things that you can address, right? And bet that it's going to be helpful to someone else in the future. So yeah, that really was kind of the premise for Manly Marriage Revival. After that, I wrote another book called Manly Separation Survival, which was actually kind of the precursor to Peace and Control. A lot of the stuff in Peace and Control was in Manly Separation Survival. And that book came out, that must have been 2017 or 2018. I always felt that that one in particular, I was like, this needs to be something more than just a book. I really feel like it would benefit from being more in depth. The course took much longer to make than writing the book. But yeah, that's kind of the journey. It just started with answering some emails. I mean, that's really what it goes back to.
Yeah, what you're describing is something in the marketing world that I call a user-generated product, right? And what that basically means is, a lot of times people get really caught up at the very beginning of trying to go past this or trying to figure out this vision for this giant business idea or this giant ministry. So first of all, there's one distinction I want to make. And there's a question that I asked you the very first time we ever spoke. So this is not a Christian ministry. This is a business. Or not specifically, or when you decided who you serve, you decided to leave the Bible out of it. But that doesn't mean that it's not a ministry in and of itself, right? Like you don't quote Ephesians, but you use the same principles to get the word across and all of that. I think that's amazing, because while this is the Business of Ministry podcast, it's for businesses and ministries. But ultimately, as long as we're spreading the word and spreading the kingdom and helping people, then doesn't make that much of a difference.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And I would distinguish there between ministry and evangelism. I would say I'm very much a ministry. When I think ministry, I think help. And so helping people is what I do. Everything on the site is to help. Evangelizing, that is not so much the goal. I hope, and I would be willing to bet, that there have been some men who, through exposure to the biblical principles taught on Husband Help Haven, did develop a relationship with God. I hope so. That's out of my hands. But my purpose is to help, and letting God do with that what he will. That's kind of how I see it. And just to clarify, when I started this site, it's not that there was absolutely no commercial intent. There was actually an affiliate program that I started that was on the site really pretty close to from the beginning, and it did okay. I cannot remember the name of the program now. It was like Your Marriage Savior or something like that. It was like a high dollar program. At that time, it was the best thing out there. The problem with it is that it was very clearly secularly written. And so it was a lot more of the like traditional alpha male type feel to it, which just isn't my style, honestly. Yeah. It's just very, very, sexual driven, very macho. And so there were guys that I know that program did help. And there were guys, and I still think there probably are guys that do well with that sort of advice, but that's not what I like to teach. And that was another sort of thing that prompted me to write my own book, is I was like, I'm very confident that I can create something better than this. And also I got more and more just bothered that I was promoting something that I wasn't fully aligned with. That just ate at me a little bit more as my audience grew. I felt a growing responsibility, having 10 or 20 people versus a few hundred versus a few thousand. You start to feel like, man, I really need to do right by these people. And if the only way to do that is to create my own product, well, I guess I better get writing,
So what I hear you saying is you kind of like, you fell into this, you started a microsite, and then you started answering questions. But when I mentioned what I call that in my world is user generated products, we call it a product. And that's one thing that I want listeners to understand, is that what we're actually creating through these things are what a lot of marketers call info products. It's an information product. It's a book, right? You called it a book, but it's not actually in print. It's an ebook, right? Like it's just an ebook that somebody can read. And then you decided to include an audio and sold it for what, like 79 or to $100 or something like that.
You could get, and still to this day, same price, $87 if you want the audios. If you just want to read it and just want the PDF and the homework, it's $67. A decision that I'm very happy that I made is that I did not put it on Amazon or anything like that. And I made sure to put more with it than just the ebook, because I didn't want people comparing the price to a Kindle book. So because I self-hosted, that meant I can make it cost more than $10, which you can't really do on it. I mean, you wouldn't sell very many because everybody's looking at $10 books on Amazon. Yeah. It's all for me. I don't have to split it with Amazon. It's just a better, more tightly incorporated into the business funnel and everything like that. It just works better that way.
I think I see it in a lot of like ministries and Christian ministries and just in the help space at all. Everybody wants to write a book. Like that's the thing. That's the purpose or point of entry. I'm just going to write a book about this thing and we'll get it published by somebody, put it on Amazon. I'll make $1 a copy.
Yeah.
But what we're really realizing is we're giving away all of our information, all of our knowledge, but we're not able to actually create a relationship with the people who are reading it. And we don't own that customer journey. Like you don't get the email address or the contact information or really the ability to help anybody on a one-on-one or one-on-many basis when you're just publishing a book.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so for me, if I were, for whatever reason, wanted to publish something on Amazon today, what I would do is I would view that as a tripwire. I would not view that as the flagship product at all. I would say, this little $10 book on Amazon, for one, it's not going to be as comprehensive or as in-depth as my full course, right? We're going to dial in on one area there, and I might write a 50-page book about that and then use that to get people to engage with the rest of the business, to come visit the website, to sign up for the email list, to check out the other product. And you see tons of people doing that sort of stuff, pitching their programs and things. And I think that Kindle books have a value for that. I imagine, I've never tried, but I imagine that it's hard to make a legitimate revenue income from just Kindle, if that's really all that you're doing. Yeah. Like you said, there's some clout that comes with being a published author, but clout doesn't pay the bills unless you got someone else to go with it.
I've heard somebody say once that your book is typically just your best business card. It's your foot in the door in order to get somebody to your next thing, right? I've actually worked with a few different authors that they were going to create a book. And I showed them, we do this thing or this exercise called a value ladder, where we say, here's what your front end product would be. Your front end, i.e. tripwire, as a lot of people in the marketing world call it. And that's just something just to get out to the world. So that way they'll Google you and go to your next thing. One mistake I see a lot of people make is they don't have a next thing. They think they're just going to make a bunch of money off the book. But what people crave, actually, I think in today's economy is a level of intimacy and connection with the authors and to understand that you're a real person. And I think that's something you did an excellent job at. Like, I was surprised that I was able to write you an email and you responded. Like, that's pretty crazy when you think about helping 2,800 men on a personal basis for $87, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think that is something that did set me apart from some of the other, there's other people online that give marriage advice and have marriage related products. And yeah, I would say, not to toot my own horn, but I think I'm a little bit more approachable. And I'm also, I think, more forthright about, I think people like that I'm honest about where my limits are in my expertise, and that I, don't pretend to know everything. I tell people, here's my experience. Here's what that's worth. Here's what I think you should do based on that experience. I hope it helps. Take that as you will. Ultimately, it's your decision. And the other thing that I've always done with all of my products, which is unique in the marriage industry, is that I tell people this product is not guaranteed to save your marriage. I did that with Manly Marriage Revival. I told people right up front, I cannot promise you that if you read this book, you're going to get your wife back, or that you're going to have a happy marriage, or that you're going to save your marriage, because a marriage is two people and your wife's not reading the book too. It's just you, so everyone else, people have these big high dollar products and they guarantee that you're going to save your marriage. And that just, to me, feels a little icky to do, because it just is so disingenuous. You can't make that guarantee. Nobody can make that guarantee. So I think that sort of thing, that just sort of genuine attitude about things, I think people see that and appreciate it. So yeah, I think that those are a couple things that distinguish me from other people in the space. But truthfully, there's definitely more today than there was when I started. But when I started Husband Help Haven, there was almost nothing online for men needing help with their marriage, specifically men. There was stuff that was for everybody, and there was stuff that was for women. There was not very much at all that was just for men who were trying to save their marriage, which is baffling, because like 75% of divorces or something like that are filed by the woman. So, if you're in marriage crisis and you want to save your marriage and your spouse doesn't, chances are you're a man. It just blew my mind that there was nothing there. I mean, that just goes to show how many, gives some explanation for why so many guys reached out. But yeah, it's just crazy.
The entire focus that you noticed when you say, obviously you're not a therapist. You haven't gone to school for 6 years to get a doctorate. You actually dropped out of school to help people in this area based on your experience and the things that you've seen. And the entire modality that you take behind this entire thing is making the man a better man, right? You don't guarantee that they're going to get their wife back, but you guarantee if they follow your principles, that they will become a better person. And that's beautiful, because no matter what happens, you're better off, right? You decided an audience that you wanted to serve with a mission that you were passionate about, and you started answering their questions. You noticed patterns within their questions, and you organized it in a structure to create something that you could sell.
Yep. Yeah. And really, with Manly Marriage Revival, I just kind of, thought about it and said, okay, what do I want to come up with? What do I want to touch on? What are the most common questions? When I wrote Manly Separation Survival, which has now become Peace and Control, I actually sent an email out to my list and said, look, if you and I could sit down for coffee for an hour and you could ask me one question about your separation, what would it be? And so I, set up a forum, let people answer it. And so I got, a couple hundred people that said, look, if I could ask you one question and pick your brain about this one thing, here's what it would be. And then, I mean, it was literally as simple as just saying, okay, well, here's 10 of these questions. Here's 20 of these questions. Here's, a few that are all isolated by themselves. And it was like the structure of the book. I mean, it basically wrote itself, because I had, here's the things that I absolutely have to make sure I touch on. Here's the things that I want to touch on if I have room. And from there, it's just a matter of arranging it. And of course, there were some extra things that I added in as well. I really fully agree with you that it is such a powerful thing when you just basically give your audience what they're asking for. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is just by making yourself available, by answering those questions, by being approachable, and then by even asking to hear the questions, You find out exactly what it is that your audience needs. What exact problems are they having? What exact answers are they looking for? Maybe some of the answers they already have, but they're just having trouble seeing them. A lot of times, a lot of work that I do with men, especially when they first come to Husband Help Haven, is just helping them take their focus off trying to control things that are outside of their control and bring it in, bring that effort and that energy in to things that they can control, which is chiefly yourself. You know, the words that you say, the thoughts that you let yourself think, the things that you do, the habits that you allow in your life. These are the things that I encourage men to start by making the most of. Once you've been doing that, then we can start thinking about how to approach your wife and what specific things we can do to court her and to win her back, and what you need in your separation. If you cannot control the one thing that you're guaranteed to have control over, which is yourself, you're not going to get anywhere. That really is the approach that I take. And I think that helps. That helps a lot of men, exactly like what you said.
So yeah, I think that's amazing too. Like, it really helped me when I went through it, like full vulnerability. You know, you had said something in the beginning of Peace and Control, spoiler alert, that basically said there's two camps of men that go through this. One camp is going to listen to this content and become a greater version of themselves. I've seen people that go through this that start businesses and lose a bunch of weight and do all of these really amazing things because they really do start focusing on themselves, which a lot of times is what attracted their wives to them in the first place. And then they stopped doing it. And then it was like, crap. So there's a lot of men who take the advice and really take heed to it and like just become the best version of themselves. And then reconciliations happen or they don't happen. But either way, you created something really awesome, you know, and I thought that was really, really grounding for me.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And it's the truth. You know, I've seen men who have gone through the most brutal separation you can imagine, and they came out of it better than they went into it. And they would tell you, I wouldn't trade that experience away. It was it was hard, the most painful thing I've ever lived through, but I grew so much through it that I wouldn't trade it away. On the flip side, I have men, you know, who go through relatively very mild separations and just completely lose it, you know, just completely go off the deep end, sometimes even to the point of becoming suicidal and things like that. And again, obviously there's some mental stuff going on there too, and I don't want to be dismissive or downplay that, but to me, it all comes back to you've got one camp of men who is determined to make the most of what they can control. And you've got another group of men who are determined to try and control something that they can't. And when you're in the latter, you're going to find yourself in a bad place mentally. That's where you get men who fall into this camp of desperation and just, you know, clinging and being the victim and just all of these qualities that are not attractive to a woman, that are not going to help you save your marriage and aren't going to help you improve yourself either. So it's just all around not a good way to approach life, much less marriage crisis. I like to establish that right up front. Step one, focus on what you can control, and we'll move forward from there. So yeah, I think that's good life advice, but especially good advice during separation.
So what exactly is Peace and Control? Because that's your flagship product now. At least that's what I would call it, your flagship product. It means it's like the main thing that you stand on, the thing that you created, the main thing you're trying to sell. So can you just explain to the audience what it is?
Sure. So the course is for men going through separation. I call it a separation strategy course. And basically what it is it is intended to walk you through the system that I've seen help men the most when they're going through separation. And again, I can be transparent and upfront. The system is pretty simple. You start by focusing on what you can control. Once you've gained self-control, then we leverage that self-control to figure out what areas of yourself you want to improve during the separation. From there, we learn what things does your wife need. Now, we may not be able to meet all of these needs, but there's an important piece there where even if you can't control your wife, you can still learn to empathize with her. And so we do some of that. And then from there, we learn about how to basically just get through the daily grind of separation, because that's something that a lot of people underestimate, just how difficult it is. Even once you have that self-control in place, even once you have that self-improvement in place, even once you have that empathy in place, just surviving the daily grind and the uncertainty of where your marriage is going to end up is very challenging. So we have a lot of the courses dealing with those sorts of things. And, you know, what do you do if your wife is asking for a divorce? What do you do if there's an affair? How should you be approaching separation in general? What does the path back to a happy marriage look like? Those are the sort of questions that we'll answer. But a big part of the course is just kind of laying a pathway and helping you answer the questions and knowing what the questions are that you should be asking yourself to help you become a better man and to help you step up as a husband, as a father, just as a person in general. So that really is what it is. It's a very comprehensive guide for men who are going through separation, who want to get the very best possible chance that they can get of saving their marriage, but also want what the namesake says, peace and control. Just feeling like you're at peace and in control of yourself during separation. Any guy whose wife has told him that she wants out of the marriage, peace and control seems like the furthest thing that you could ever achieve. In the course, we try to achieve it. And a lot of men say that they managed to get there. So, again, that doesn't make it easy, but it means that you're in control. You have direction, you have clarity. So that really is what the course is intended to do.
So when you talk about course in terms of like what it actually is, it's a series about 15 modules or something
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I guess I told you what the course was from a subject point of view. I'll tell you what it
that.
is from a technical point of view. So the course is entirely video based. So it is 7 modules. Each module has 5 to 8 videos. The videos are approximately 15 minutes long. I think I totaled it up somewhere around 11 or 12 hours of video content in the course. There's also some additional resources that I include in there for some things that didn't really fit anywhere else into the course, but were still important questions to answer. So I have that sort of extra kind of appendix, I guess you might call it. I also include a couple of case studies in there. So I had a couple guys who were gracious enough to permit me to share our correspondence. So I have a couple guys where you can kind of see, where their separation started, kind of the messages that we exchanged with each other, and then how things end up, along with some of my analysis and kind of commentary throughout. So you can kind of see, hey, pay attention here. This is an important lesson. Make sure you're paying attention to this part, that sort of thing. So we have those sort of case studies. In addition, I would actually say that the course is very valuable. 2 other extremely valuable components of the course are the weekly Q&A calls. So every week I encourage students to submit a question if they wish, and to join us on a live Q&A call. That's just a Zoom call, just like what we're doing right now. And I'll just answer whatever questions have been submitted that week live to the audience. And even if, a guy didn't submit a question, oftentimes there's still some lesson to be learned just from hearing what other men are going through and some of the other struggles they're facing. And then along that same vein of just kind of group support, we have a private Facebook group for men who are going through separation. I honestly have just been blown away at how cool it is. I mean, I was worried about how difficult it would be to kind of cultivate the culture that I wanted in the group, which would be one of support and empathy and encouragement, not one of judgment or, just being depressed all the time or critical. Or, certainly there's some days where it's like a lot of the guys just seem to be having a hard time. It can be kind of hard to browse through on those days, which is inevitable. You got 300 guys who are all going through separation. You're going to get some downer days. But man, the encouragement and just honestly, the brotherhood that I see in that group day after day after day, it's just awesome. And it is so humbling because there are guys in there who are just really incredible men and impressive husbands too. So I absolutely love the Facebook group. I love getting in there and seeing what the guys are saying and sharing with each other. It's an awesome place. But that wouldn't exist without the course, So it's like people are most interested in the course, but it's those extra support tools that really make it into something very special, I think.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. The reason that I asked that question too
Mhm.
is the fact that I just want to look at the timeline of this. So you
Mm.
launched the course not too long ago, but ultimately it came out of a stem of an idea. You chose a customer or
Mhm.
basically chose a mission that you're passionate about. And you
Mhm.
started doing research on that mission by actually working with people one-on-one, basically
Mhm.
for free. I mean,
Yep.
not for anything charged. And obviously, if somebody's out there listening, wondering where would I start with something like this, you could start a free Facebook group, just like what you
Mhm.
have that's private, create that culture and start
Mhm.
getting all of these questions, create a user generated course based on the things that people are
Yep.
asking, right?
To fill in a little bit of kind of the journey from manly marriage revival to peace and control in terms of like kind of from a marketing and content creation point of view. So I made manly marriage revival. I really liked it. But again, like I said, I realized that I wanted something more focused on separation because that really is the niche. Most of the men come to Husband Help Haven not because they want to be a better husband, but because they're desperate to save their marriage and they're typing into Google, midnight on their iPhone, how do I get my wife back in desperation? So that's how most men find the site. And so I knew that I needed something that was more specifically tailored to that. Like I had mentioned earlier, eventually decided, you know what, I'm going to write another book, sent out the email, asked guys for questions. Of course, I'm publishing content this whole time, keeping up an engaged email list, things like that to the best of my ability. We had kids during that time, had our first children, got the questions, wrote Manly Separation Survival, and then almost immediately realized, you know what, book isn't good enough. I want to do more. I want to make a course. So actually, you're right. It did take a long time. once I decided I was going to commit to creating a course, not just a book, but actually a full-on video course, I wrote out the course material in text form. And then I actually recruited just a handful of guys that I had been keeping up with privately. And I just asked them point blank, like, hey, listen, I'm working on a course. I have kind of a rough kind of beta version of the course available. It's text, it's similar to some of the other stuff I have. Would you be willing to work through this with me for the next 6 weeks for X dollars? Would that be worth it to you to work through this course with me? So I started with, I think it was 3 guys that said yes, they were interested. They signed up, they paid for 6 weeks of coaching and going through the course with me. And that really let me put it into practice and kind of handhold the first cohort of guys through that. After I went through that, I kind of got some feedback. That's when I sort of scripted out the videos once I had gone through the course. So I tested it, tested the principles, figured out where things weren't quite hitting the mark that I wanted them to hit. And then I scripted out the videos. And then I did a very similar thing again, where I said, listen, I created a free online course, that separation roadmap that you can find on the site. And I asked guys if they were interested in a free course. And then of the guys who were interested in the free course, I said, listen, if you liked this, I have this brand new course that I'm taking a limited number of guys through. If you're interested, you can sign up now. It's going to be open for a week. Sign up now, and then I'm going to be taking it down, and we're going to be going through it together over the next 6 weeks and just seeing how it goes. You can help me make this into something really good. So again, got like, I don't know, 50 or 60 guys maybe who signed up for the paid course. Then we ran through it. I made a couple extra videos because it was after that first early bird group, just a handful of guys, it was pretty good. I still made a few changes in that second sort of run through. And then it was finally last year that I finally opened doors to the full on public, unveiling of Peace and Control. But I mean, that whole process it was early 2019 when I first had that group of 3 or 4 guys go through that very early version of the course. Late 2019 when I opened it up to the like 50 or 60 guys. And then it was mid 2020 when I opened up the full course. So just to give you an idea of that sort of development, it's kind of like what you said, very organic. And it started, just to be clear, this is the point that I wanted to point out. It started by just asking guys, like pitching it to them one-on-one in a private email. Hey, I have this. Are you interested? I figured if I got no interest in that, then I probably shouldn't make the course because people weren't actually interested in it. I was wrong, but they were interested in it. So it all worked out.
It's funny because you're hitting like every nail right on the head as far as what I would suggest for people to do, but you're just doing it by intuition.
I have there are people that I follow in the online marketing. So, I didn't come up with all of that stuff. I read into group coaching. I read into online course development. I read into launching and all that sort of stuff. So I read a lot of stuff. And so I didn't come up with these ideas, but I did pick out the ones that I knew would fit for my business and my sort of style. And yeah, it took a bunch. I mean, honestly, there were a lot of nerves to overcome to go to somebody who you've been having just an email conversation with and say, hey, listen, here's a course and I want to coach you through it. Do you feel like paying $600 to do this with me? I mean, that's a kind of a big ask, but there were guys who were, so it worked out. I made it a good deal. I made sure that they knew that they were getting a lot of support and really committed to, for that handful of guys. I mean, I just took such good care of them. I answered every email, was available for the calls. We had a call every week, these guys. So they got private coaching. We worked through the course together, worked through the homework together. And it just was a very good experience for them. And I wanted that because I wanted to know exactly what they were thinking and what they were feeling and what they were learning as they were putting into practice the lessons of the course. But yeah, it helped me feel better about pitching it right at that very first moment with that small group of guys, knowing that I had a good deal, knowing that I was providing just massive, massive value. That's what helped me work up the courage to do that.
So cool. So if you had to go back and do anything differently, is there anything that you would do differently starting over again?
Oh man, I'd make my own product sooner, definitely. I would overcome those nerves and I would just do it sooner. Even with Manly Marriage Revival, I could have written a book that was a third the size and been selling it in 2014. And the thing is, not only would that have been better for me and for the business, it would have been better for the guys that I was trying to help too. And that really is the thing that I had to learn, is that my goal still to this day with Husband Help Haven, and what I remind myself every time that I'm planning the next quarter or the next year with my business, my metric for success in this business is marriages saved and men helped. And that's it. Now, I measure the impact that the business is having by the revenue. That's a helpful measurement, but the goal is helping men. And that was always very much part of my outlook on the business. And because of that, I think I was actually too hesitant to market or to try and make my own product, to try and grow the business financially. I felt like, it went against that to have a product that I was trying to sell people. So it really took me being basically begged by my audience, please, we want more from you. Please help us. Give us a book. Give us something that we can have to go through to get more information. That's when it kind of, after the 100th time clicked, like, oh yeah, I guess it would actually be like good for them for me to have a book that they can buy, because it's not just for me. It's not just for the business. They're asking for it. They need it. It's helpful. And I've since learned, I went through a very similar hurdle, moving the price of my flagship product. Used to be Manly Marriage Revival at $87. So now Peace and Control, which is $300. But what I realized is that there's something to be said for investing in something that you're serious about. And the guys who I've given free access to, some of them are very grateful, and I know that they go through the course and they use it and stuff like that. But there have been plenty of guys where I gave them free copy of Manly Marriage Revival, free access to Peace and Control even. And I know that they don't use it because it was free. And that's just human nature. It's nothing against them. It's just human nature, I think. So yeah, I think if I could go back and do a little bit of a side tangent there, but yeah, if I could go back and do anything differently, it would definitely be just moving faster, getting it done sooner.
I loved the side tangent because there are two core laws that I teach in my marketing things that I do that you covered right there. Number one, you're required to charge for what you do because people won't take it seriously otherwise. And number two, that money is a result, not the goal. Money comes after you help people solve their problems. It is a measure. It is a metric. It is a measure of value in the marketplace, but it should not be the main goal of a mission-driven business. The main goal should be to accomplish your mission, not to make money. So I love that you covered both of those without any cue ups or anything. That was amazing.
Yeah. And it's tough because like, I really like that principle of charging for, not doing anything for free. At the same time, I think that me giving free help to so many men, I mean, that was basically like my training, that was my education. That's where I got all my experiences, just making myself available to do that. But I was intentional about that. And I think in a way recognized that I was benefiting too from being part of these conversations. So yeah, I think once you are serious about a business, I agree. You should at least be mindful of what you're doing for free. It took me a lot of like conversations with myself to get up the courage to like charge something, but you have to do it. You just have to do it because it's exactly what you said. It benefits the people that you're trying to help to have a price. People need to be able to invest in things. It helps them take it more seriously and get more out of it.
I hope you just inspired somebody to then create a product and then go and charge for it and create their own little business and ministry and affect the lives of a lot of people. That's the entire purpose and the entire goal here. So I guess we'll kind of cut it off at that because we're nearing our time here. But if somebody wanted to go and check out your stuff. So I know that if we were to go through, usually I give a visual representation. Maybe I will try to here, but on the front end, you have something like a couple free products, a 3+1 separation strategy, and like another free course. Where would somebody go to get these things?
Yeah. So, you're exactly right. I guess I'll just quickly run through it because you touched on it. I think it's good to just for people to be aware. It's a very conventional funnel, the way that the business is set up right now. Almost all of the traffic comes from Google, organic traffic. People come to husbandhelphaven.com. That's the website. They find podcast episodes or blog posts that they're interested in. And then if they are really interested in it or they find it helpful, then I have a couple primary lead magnets that get people onto the email list. So I actually just this year updated my email autoresponder to be more, up to date and more authoritative and a little bit more expansive as well. Initial numbers on that are looking very good. I've been very pleased with that so far. But yeah, I have a guide called From Separated to Reconciled in 7 Steps that's available on the homepage at husbandhelphaven.com. And it's really just an overview of what steps need to happen between two people for them to go from separated to reconciled. So it's just kind of a bird's eye view process of not like what should you do, but just this needs to happen, and then this needs to happen, and then this needs to happen, and then this needs to happen. Not so much how do you make those things happen, just here are the things that needs to happen. And if these things happen, you will have a happy marriage at the end of it. So that's kind of what the From Separated to Reconciled in 7 Steps is. And then in the accompanying email lessons that go along with that, we kind of break that a little bit more down to, within this process, here's like 4 or 5 things that you are in charge of, that you have agency over. How do we make the most of those things? Well, here's an email. We're going to talk all about this one way. And then here's another email. We're going to talk about like expectations and what those mean in your relationship and how you apply those during separation, things like that. And then through the email, just provide tons and tons of value. And I tell people, the pitch that I make to people is that my free stuff is better than anyone else's paid stuff. And so you can be assured that if you sign up for my course or if you sign up for Mailing Marriage Revival, you're going to get stuff that's going to help you. And I only want your money if it is going to help you, that is really what I'm all about. Yeah. I just provide people a ton of value with those email lessons. I include yet another, like a free online course that they can gain access to through those email lessons if they follow along with. So far, the early numbers, I've been running this new autoresponder for 3 or 4 months. It's really staggering, honestly. Like 60 or 70% open rates across the board, really high engagement with everything. And then, yeah, from there, I basically go from email subscriber to pitching the Peace and Control course. And then, I have a pretty hard pitch in there. And then after that, I kind of just get people engaged with the rest of the business. So if they're not right away interested in Peace and Control after a couple of weeks of email lessons, then I said, that's okay. Here's a common question that I get. Here's a resource for that. Here's another common question that I get in the next email. Here's a resource for that. So I'm really just trying to get them as engaged in the website as possible from there, and really just providing them the full scope of resources that are available on Husband Help Haven, because that's a lot to go through if you're just trying to just look at it from not knowing it from Adam, After I've done the sort of marketing side of things, the rest of the autoresponder is just trying to get people engaged in the business and giving them all the resources that they need. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, pretty stock standard funnel, really. Eventually, I may create an additional tripwire for Peace and Control. That's probably something I might do next year or later this year. But for right now, I'm just going to be focusing on, I need to pick back up the podcast. I haven't published a podcast episode in a few months, so I need to get that started. Husband Help Haven podcast. So you can find us on all the normal podcast places. I keep the podcast, they're all around 20 minutes.
I've listened to a few of them. They're super good. It's like just one quick question, a quick answer as far as what.
Yeah. I tried to make them about a good length that you could listen to on your way to work or something like that. Just a quick little snippet.
One of the things that I teach in the community is creating a customer journey, creating a clear path from one product to the next, and making it happen strategically, but not being pushy. Like you've done a really good job at that.
I would say that one of my best marketing skills is, I think, actually making autoresponders and that sort of thing is one of my good skills. I mean, writing in general is a good skill for me. But one of the things that I really attribute for helping me get good engagement is that all of my emails connect together. For the autoresponder, each email leads into the next one with an open loop. And so at the end of each email, I will say in big, bold letters, next time, here's a really compelling question that we're going to answer. Obviously, I don't say it that way. I list out the question. And then I tell them that you can expect it, in a couple of days. So it just leaves them, it's like a cliffhanger, off the end of the email. They want to get that next answer. Oh, what is the one thing that my wife needs to hear before she'll come back? What is the biggest mistake that men make? Just little things like that. And I think that setting those expectations and kind of leaving those open loops at the end of the emails really helps kind of keep people engaged. And of course, I plan that part out like so that it feels fluid and natural and stuff before I even upload it. So I'm writing them kind of all at once and chaining them all together and making it all fluid and kind of making sure that A ties into B, ties into C, ties into D. into a pitch, into engagement, things like that. So just being kind of mindful about that, I think, has really helped get an engaging autoresponder.
Cool. Well, just to leave it on an open loop, thank you so much for being here. And if you guys want to find out the 7 steps to go from separated to a happy marriage, head over to Husband Help Haven and you'll be able to .com and you'll be able to discover that. So, and that would be an example of an open loop.
Yep. Yeah. There you go. Awesome.
Yeah. Well, hey, thank you so much, Stephen.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me on. My pleasure.